Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on the Moviemantz Q&A. Very excited to be joined by the screenwriter and actor for the new film, Before, During, After. This film won the Best Ensemble Cast Award at the San Diego International Film Festival, and it won the Best of the Fest at the Greenpoint Film Festival. The film tells the story of Jenny Monroe. She's an aspiring actor in New York City who is mourning the loss of her marriage and moving forward with her life, trying to navigate the difficult waters post-divorce. Let's take a look at Before, During, After.
This marriage is on thin ice. Your job/homework is to not talk too much and have as much sex as possible.
A toast to Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. May you always be as in love as you are today.
You guys have kids?
You have children, no?
When's the baby due?
We're pushing 40. What if we just got out of the way to see if it was meant to be?
I thought we didn't want a baby.
Mint? No? Okay.
Monroe, right?
Yes.
That would be funny if you weren't. Like if you came out here to make out a will and I handed you separation papers. Like, whoa, honey, what the F is going on here?
When did you take your ring off? Hey, don't rush it. You'll know.
I wish I were the kind of person who could just travel on my own. What if I were that kind of fearless person?
You are a fearless person.
Her heart has been shattered, but it's actually gotten to be bigger now. In pieces, thank you very much.
You have this opportunity to be whoever you want to be.
You don't want to wait until you meet your dream man to go on your first date. You got to work out the kinks.
The second we sleep together, the tingles go down immediately, like at least 50%.
50%? Are you that bad in bed?
Shut up.
I whipped up a kick-ass divorce mix playlist for you.
And I was in charge of the booze.
Right.
Joining me right now is actor and screenwriter FINNERTY Steeves. FINNERTY, thank you so much for joining me on the Moviemantz Q&A, and congratulations on this film.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Scott. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. And when we saw the film for the first time, or at least I did, back in October for the San Diego International Film Festival, I was just struck by just how it's a beautiful film. It's so moving. It's honest. It's genuine. It covers a very heavy subject, but it does so with so much levity and humor. You really struck the right balance here. And I just want to know, like, when did you get the idea? When did the epiphany hit you to write this film?
Well, I'm an actor. I've always been an actor. I've always wanted to write, but didn't feel like I had a story to tell, really. And then my marriage fell apart, and so I as it was sort of falling apart, I was completely devastated and heartbroken. But I don't know if it's because I'm an actor, but I was aware that certain moments were humorous, and couldn't laugh at the time. But I was like, I hope someday I can be healthy enough, have my heart healed in a way that I can try to write this or share this story. And I didn't know really how to do that, but I that was sort of, the impetus behind the film.
Well, they say write what you know. And, listen, having gone through this myself, I completely related to this movie in all the right ways, all the points. And, going through something like this, it's traumatic, it's devastating, and it's just something that you just have to go through. It means adjusting your life, moving forward with your life, reinventing yourself, figuring out who you are and who you want to be, and also letting go of old habits. And you hit all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when did it hit you that you were going to write this screenplay and tell the story in a non-linear format?
The way I met my current husband, it was just really interesting, crazy. We found each other on Misconnections, like that's a whole other movie. But but I wanted to write that, and I was thinking about writing that. And then, to be in all honesty, a friend of mine, I was telling the story about how I met my husband, and she said, "You have to write that." And I was like, "Oh, I am. I'm just not sure if it's a play or, And then she wrote it. She wrote a version of it in a short play, and at first I was upset, but then I was not upset with her. I was like more mad at myself, because I was like, my first thought was like, oh, I was going to write that. And then I was like, were you, Finn? You were going to write that? You're 40 years old. You've never written anything, you know? So that was what sort of got me started, where I was like, what am I waiting for? Like, why am I waiting? Like, I have stories to tell. So there was Leslie Headland was having this class I was really wanting to get into, because she's a screenwriter and a theater person. So I was interested in that. Her class was full. And I overheard someone talking about this great teacher, a guy named Jason Greif, who teaches at NYU. And so I signed up that night for a class and ended up writing the first day, just sort of turning in pieces, you know, and that's when it was actually Jason's idea when he said, this is your film. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you have us riveted because you're telling it to us out of order. And so we're trying to put these pieces together. And I was like, well, oh, that's amazing. Because that's what divorce feels like, right? Where you're trying to move forward, but memories come back. And then how does the memory change based on where you are in your healing? So, but I also I will admit that I felt guilty sort of breaking rules that I didn't totally understand yet. So I'm like, who am I to, you know, sort of break rules with the first film? And he was like, stop all that. Because I would get sort of scared when someone would say, okay, well, this is great, but what's your break into 3, you know, break into act 3? And I'm like, oh, never mind, I don't know. And, you know, and Jason would be like, you know how to tell a story. Like, what does this story feel like to you? So I had to be strategic in terms of where we put certain scenes. And that was a whole other thing that obviously I needed the whole incredible team to help me put all of that together. There were some puzzle pieces that moved around. Most of them ended up back in the order, but we kind of had to play with those pieces to figure out, even though it's nonlinear, what is Jenny's journey, emotional journey, versus sort of like what happened first. And then, you know.
Well, you said you hadn't written anything before. So when you finally sat down and said, I'm doing this, was it easy for you? Did it come easy? Was it like opening up the floodgates, and did you write it like in a week, or was it something that really took a lot of time?
It took a lot of time, but it was more, I had to tell myself, I was also pregnant. So I knew I sort of had this ticking, you know, I felt like I needed to get this done before the baby came, which was great. But I also just had to tell myself that I would get the crappy version out first, like, because I was just so afraid of being like a hack or something, you know, like who, you know, so I was just like, oh, my perfectionism would get in the way. So I was like, why don't I just write the crappy version of the scene where she finds out this or that, and I'll write the crappy version of this, and then I'll just fix it later. And so that's what I had to do finally, was just to do that. Like, oh, this is, you know, I'd like have a little plate, like this is a placeholder for this scene. And then, you know, 9 times out of 10, it was really close to what I wrote, but I just had to do that in order to let myself do it.
You know, it's the little things about going through a separation, going through a divorce that really hit you. Like, for example, you're in bed and just out of habit, you reach over to touch the person, and that person is not there. There's that moment when you take off your ring, like your character in the film. I was at a diner when I made the decision, and I just was like, told the waiter, I was like, I just took off my ring. I mean, like, and it was moments like that it was like the little things, the little moments of the film that really resonated. So since you had gotten to a point in your life where you felt like you had moved past a lot of that grief and turmoil, was it cathartic for you to go back and write about that and then go back and film those scenes? Or was it like liberating? What were the feelings that you had?
I must say it did feel good to, once I wrote them, I felt like I didn't have to replay them anymore. Like, for whatever reason, I don't know if this is just a me thing or if this is a people thing, but like I would, and which is what is, you know, one of Jenny's flaws or whatever too, is that, you know, how we can replay a memory over and over, and how it changes with the information that we have now. And even like what was a beautiful memory, how it could be tainted if, you know, if somebody says it's actually something different. And so I myself have a terrible memory. So it did feel good to get a version of the story down. And it's not exactly, because memory is bizarre, right? So like, I'm sure my ex would have a different version of what happened. And ultimately it took on a life of its own, right? Like when I watch it now, it's Jenny and David. It's not me. I don't feel like, oh, this is so, but I will say the only scene, like being able to play the role too was so fun, but I never felt like I was, you know, like exercising anything as an actor, because it really became a whole other world. It was just somebody that I totally understood. Like, I got this gal and I know this, I get the humor, and and by humor, I don't mean funny. I mean, like,
Levity.
Yes. I just totally lost what I was just saying.
I feel like, the range. Well, first of all, what I loved about the film, and I was able to appreciate it when I saw it the second time, is the framework of using the audition as a purge. Like by the time like she gets to her audition, the key scene, like she crushes it because she's really tapping into all those emotions. And obviously you definitely write what as an actor, auditioning a million times, and actors will, we all know acting, auditioning is horrible. I mean, it's just the worst. Like where did you get the idea to kind of frame the film with the audition?
I had an audition in real life for a beautiful play called Dinner with Friends. And it was shortly after I asked my ex to move out, and it was me. I mean, I couldn't even read it. I was sobbing so hard. It was just so beautiful. And I loved that she was fine in the end. She was happy in the end, but she had to go through this, and I thought, I'm going to crush this, because I've always just been a pretty emotional, available actor, and, been able to sort of connect. And I walked in the room, and like Jenny, like I just could not go there. And I was shocked by it. And almost word for word, like the what I had Michael Emerson say, which was like, hey, I'm going to stop you, and he actually said, like, if you can even imagine this woman whose life she thought she knew is gone. Everyone thought they were the perfect couple, everyone, including her, and he's trying to help. He's basically saying, like, I know you probably can't imagine this, but give it a whirl. And I could, in real life, I ended up not being able to do it. I couldn't do it. So I changed that. I made it so that I was able to kind of go back and fight for myself and do it. But that was sort of, that was going to be the bookends of the film. And then we sort of play again with time, as you know, with the bookends actually being about seeing him again, which is a tad further out. So we sort of, the tent poles, if you will, are the audition, but the true bookends is this flood of memories. She's moving on, she's doing well. It's only a year out, so you can only be doing so well, no matter who you are, a year out. And he's there. And like what that does, and the memories that hit you,
It's really one of the other things I love about the film is how, could be having a great day, Jenny's having a great day, but then somebody says something and then, puts you right back into that, mourning, grieving process. But I have to say, your performance, Finn, is just magnificent, because Jenny really goes through just a gamut of emotions here. She's so happy in the wedding scenes, and just feeling so much this insecurity when she suspects that her husband is cheating, and then just the absolute mourning process and the grieving process, to the ultimate like moment when she realizes that she's stronger than she realized. Talking to the other guy, I'll get to that. But what were the challenges for you to just like cover it all?
That was hard too, and I had to keep, and this was another great thing with the team, like our direct, Jack and Steve were just incredible with, like, they kept me in check really with where the audience was in Jenny's journey. So even if I was like emotionally hooked in a certain way, like with the Clark character, for example, Steven would say, like, we need Jenny to be a little, like, I know you're hooked in, but we're ready for Jenny to be here now. Like, so that was interesting. I also personally had to let go of feeling like I was taking care of everybody's divorce. Like, I'm like, I can tell this story. And it doesn't mean that someone who has a much different, and we just kept talking about, like, the more specific we can be, hopefully the more people can actually connect to it, and not say like, oh, that's not how it is, or that's not what it's like when, because we all know that at the same time that my life was falling apart, it was like when the Tiger Woods thing was happening, the guy who went to the Himalayas, like all that stuff it was like in the air, and maybe it always is, but I was just tuned into it because my life was falling apart. But there was a part of me that was like, I wish I was the kind of person who would take a golf club and beat the crap out of a car, but I'm not that person, right? That's just not me. And that was the other thing too that was hard, is like trying to, during the divorce, was be like, I don't want to be somebody I'm not, so how do you be true to yourself in these like very dramatic, horrible times, and let yourself feel what you need to feel, but also just try to figure out and stay true to who you think you are. But all of that is obviously completely turned upside down. Or was for me anyway. But
Yeah, well, listen, I, no matter how compassionate the separation process is, and mine definitely was. There were no hard feelings at all. We remained and are really, really good friends and very much in each other's lives, which I'm very, very grateful for. But divorce is still a traumatic experience. I went through an immense amount of shock and despair and a low point, like what happened in my life. But it's just a process that you have to go through. And I love when Jenny gets to a certain point. I don't want to give too much away talking about the movie, but there is a point where she gets to where she realizes that she's a lot further along than she realized. And I just, that was like the key third act moment where you really stuck the landing with the movie. How far into the writing process did that scene come about?
So are you talking, which scene are you talking about?
The guy in the street?
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. Yeah, that was interesting to me too, because we can't really talk about that, right? But there's a moment where she could easily be the other woman, right? Or like the lines can be blurry when people aren't happy and he doesn't get me and we don't laugh anymore. And I wanted to also have, without it being preachy, but to give her the opportunity to be like, I'm a little further along than you are. I'm not going to judge you, but go back and tell her this stuff. And it's also stuff that maybe Jenny wishes she could go back and like be more honest with David, but give her the opportunity, like buy cannolis for her, do fun, I think that it was a part of showing her growth. It was also super important for me for this film not to be about her getting, even though she wanted to be happily married with a baby and a great job, I didn't want this to ever be about her getting the baby, the job, or the guy. It was not what this was about. And I always wanted that last feeling to be like, oh, she's going to be okay. It's like divorce is rough, but she's going to be all right. And so will he. And she'll probably actually be better off before him in some ways, it is hard for everybody. The person who was sideswiped, the person who wanted it for years and couldn't say they wanted it, that I just wanted that feeling of like, there of a little bit of peace. And, I don't know if you remember that moment where a bird flies through too. And that was, not planned. That was a random white dove in the West Village. Yes.
That's a sign.
I mean, isn't that weird? It's like so bizarre. We didn't even see it until later because they called cut, and it wasn't until like one of the directors was like, you guys, you're not going to believe this. Because originally the last shot was supposed to be of Jenny at peace. And then instead the shot is David walking away and then this white dove flying from left to right. It's just, we couldn't believe it. It was,
wow.
It's not a lot of doves in New York City. I mean, it was just this.
Right, definitely not. That's amazing. That's like that's a sign. I mean, that is absolutely a sign. But speaking of filming in New York City, speaking of filming at all, making a movie is really rough. Making an independent film is really, really rough. You wrote this movie, you produced it, you acted in it. What was like the biggest challenge to get the green light to start filming?
I will say in some ways it was a little bit, for me, it was just to ask for help. I've never asked for help in my entire life. I've always been super like, I can do this. I've just never asked for help. And I had to do that for the first time. And I've been doing it for now 5 years. It's been like, but that to me was the hardest, was just asking for help. But I was blown away by people who said yes to me. And then once more than one person said yes, then I was like, oh God, we're doing this now. And so that's, it was important for me to keep it a smaller film. I think there was a opportunity at some point for us to make it a bigger film, but I really wanted it to be ours and something that we had control over, and that we created, and that we didn't sort of feel like we were handing over to somebody else. And I'm so proud of it. I mean, there's so many people who helped me. It's just like the list is on and on and on and on of people who stepped up. And I just, when I see the film, I'm sorry, I'm emotional, but that's what I see is like,
Yeah, no, listen.
It was, stepped up for me.
For sure. And listen, talk about getting the right directors, not just one, but two directors here. How did you, what made Stephen Kunkin and Jack LaWars like the right directors for this movie?
They were so great. I mean, in all honesty, I was originally assuming I would have a female director. So I was working, in conversation with some friends that are very talented friends. And, but out of that came, I knew that it was probably going to have to be friends that I worked with, because it was just a smaller movie. So at that point, two friends came to me. One of them is my friend Katie Hyde, who ended up producing, who's married to Jack. They came to me separately and said, listen, we will help you no matter what, because we love you and we will support you. But we want to throw our hats in the ring to help you do this. Jack would direct, I would produce, and we would, and I said, oh my gosh, like, think about it. Please do not feel pressure. It is what is best for you and for the film. And then a few days later, my dear friend, Jen Thompson, who's an amazing theater director, she said, do you definitely want a female director? I said, no, I'm open, because she's an amazing theater director. So I was in conversation with her about possibly doing it. And she said, would you consider Steve? She's married. And I said, yeah. And she's like, he loves the script and would love to talk to you about it. I'm like, great. So I had these two dear friends really kind of vying for it. And they brought such different things to the table. And I thought, how the heck am I going to make this decision? And I started Googling like co-directors, and it's like, don't do it. It's a nightmare. Unless they're married or siblings, it's a nightmare. I just felt it in my gut that this was supposed to be my team. And at first they were both like hesitant, definitely, and not really open to it. So I was like, let's have a drink. Let's just have a drink, and we'll still, no pressure. Let's just, so we met at a bar, started chatting, talking about film in general, Finn's film. What if we did this? Oh, that'd be cool. How's October? And then Jack had a specific window in October where he's one of the head colorists over at Technicolor, and was able to have 30 days off, this like small little window. So we just said, we're doing it. And we kind of hugged it out. And it was incredible. I really can't imagine, two other people. They were just perfect. It was like I had a sort of a dream team. I know it was, I'm sure, challenging to them. And there was a lot of, we all had to kind of sacrifice, but because we respected each other, there was some times where I would really fight for something. And then the guys would be like, Finn, I don't think we need that because this or the other thing. I'd be like, okay, cool. Or like Steve and I would be on something, or or vice versa, or Jack and I would be fighting for something, and Steve would not, but we would, if the majority was sort of fighting for it, we would go, okay, the other one would let it go. It was like, so it took longer for us to do this because we also had Cutter Studios come on board, and they were incredible, but that was, that took time also because of their schedule they're like incredible. They're known for like their commercials and stuff. So a part of the deal is that we would always come second to Cadillac and Jeep and, whatever else. But that was an incredible relationship, but that took time too. But it was, I think it's for the best. Like it was really, we were able to really massage it and find the truth of the piece.
Absolutely. And, your co-star, Jeremy Davidson, who plays your ex, soon to be ex, almost ex in the film, is just really terrific. Just working with Jeremy. What's your take?
Oh my gosh. He's He's so dreamy. It's just he has like 5 kids. He lives in the country. He's just like a real down to earth. Like, I think he said when we called, he got the offer and he was like on a tractor. I'm like, of course you were, you know. But he's just incredibly talented. And I've since seen him in so many other things that I'm like, oh my gosh, he really got David. He really understood him. He, you know, the David character, it was so important to find somebody who was really likable, because it was in some ways unfair to Jeremy and the character that we reveal very soon that he cheated. You know, a lot of times in traditional sort of story arcs, you kind of fall in love with someone, you think, oh, they're such a great couple, and then they, you know, then the thing happens. And we right away were like, hey, this thing happened, and now you have to kind of sit with it with us and see how they get through this. And I think that's why the card scene is like beautiful and sad at the same time, because you get to see them totally in love, but it's after we know other things. So yeah.
I mean, seeing the wedding, you know, the wedding scene and the diner scene, you know, I hear you. But again, like, you know, going back to the takeaway for me, and you know, I want to talk about your hope for takeaway from this is that, you know, you are stronger than you think you are. You just got to go through it, whatever it is, whether it's a divorce or any other shock, trauma, loss of your life. You just got to go through the process, and you will get through it because you are stronger than you think you are. What is the takeaway that you hope people get out of this too?
Well, that's beautiful, Scott. I mean, that is what I was hoping for. And, you know, obviously to be entertaining, but I really did want people to be inspired by it in some way, of whether they're in the middle of it or in the after of it, you know, that they will connect in some way. And I don't think it necessarily even has to be a divorce. I think it can be any kind of, if you think your life is one, I think in some ways what we're going through, just in terms of all of us are in this strange world right now with the pandemic, that our lives, so many lives have been changed. And so, you know, how can we move forward? How can we pick up the pieces and move forward? And I think for me, you know, one of the things that the director says to her, and someone said to me, was, you know, I felt like I was faking it when I was walking around trying to act like I was okay when I wasn't. I just felt like I was not authentic because my heart literally felt like it was in pieces. And then somebody told me, and I don't remember who, but they were like, can you think of it as like, yes, your heart is broken, but it's actually bigger now because of the pieces. It's actually gotten to be bigger because of the pieces. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. That I could do. It's freaking, it's massive and it's all broken, but it's so much bigger now. And I was like that. So I hope that that's kind of the feel that people can walk away when they see it, of like, you know, yes, I went through something similar, or you know, but I will be okay. I'll get through this. That's my hope.
And on top of that, I just like that as time goes on, the two of them together, I mean, the relationship will obviously be very, very different, but they're going to be okay. They're still going to have some connection. And after you're together for however many years, that's absolutely the best possible outcome, is that you maintain a relationship, that you maintain love and compassion towards each other. So there are so many takeaways from this. Finnerty, I know the movie drops on demand on February 9th, and everyone watching, please spread the word to watch before, during, after. This is a true independent film, and it's a beautiful film, and it's a terrific movie. It is exactly the kind of movie that needs support from movie lovers like you. Finnerty Steeves, thank you so much for joining me here, and be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much again for joining me here on the Moviemantz Q&A. Please be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, Scott Mantz. Please be sure to like this video, and please be sure to share this video with other movie lovers, so everyone goes, just watches on demand, watches before, during, after. Until the next episode of the Moviemantz Q&A, here's looking at you, kid.